Hey friends, how's it going? Alexis here. I'm at my studio, the Plaza Roja, and this is the last episode of the series about making the music for the podcast, The Slowdown. After the show was done, after we are finished with the process, I sat down at the American Public Media Studios in Manhattan with Major Jackson, the host of the show, and with Myka Kielbon, the producer. We talked about a range of things about the process of making this show and this music, and mostly we improvised. We had a really great time. It's a bit of an early and fun conversation, and I hope that you enjoy it. I will see you on the other side.
Have you heard an episode yet?
No.
Oh, good. So you get 2 reactions.
Yeah.
And I get to watch your faces. Should we do this now, or do you want to? Yeah.
I'm Major Jackson, and this is The Slowdown. One beautiful morning last summer, I rushed to hit the trails. If I had any common sense, I would have waited a couple days after the previous night's rains. The forest floor was mucky, so shortly into my hike, I tripped and slid down the slope on the side of the mountain. I was in some pain and held my left wrist. Grimacing, I panned the ground. My face opened in surprise, and then opened some more in wonder. Here before me was a patch of porcelain white flowers that I'd never seen before, growing in the wild. In fact, I had never seen anything like them here in the Musalamu region of Vermont's Green Mountains. They were eerie, translucent stalks, huddled in clusters, their heads hanging as if embarrassed by my having discovered them. An image that reminded me of a Rodin sculpture, The Burghers of Calais. I had landed in a field of ghost pipes, the Monotropa uniflora. They looked like flowers from the underworld. Encounters with nature can transfigure us, have us think differently, put us in harmony with it and possibly with each other. This might be part of its survival circuitry. There's that colorful lantana bush in bloom in your yard, or a spread of wild aster deep in the forest saying, "Hey, over here, take notice. I'm precious, don't trample me." The natural world is strange, unexpected, sure, but how else would we stumble upon new things to love? Whenever something new floats across my sight, like that meadow of ghost pipe, I become obsessed with learning as much as I can. Then life becomes more perceptible, rather than a daunting, stubborn mystery. We are given the gift of wonder and awe in order to tide us over, until the world feels once again grasped, more illuminated, and we feel on firmer ground. Today's poem models how we might, if given the chance once again, dignify the earth and its inhabitants with our attention, so that seeing, and seeing deeply, evolves into care and reverence. The poem invites us, by example, to not only notice the earth, but to become earth stewards, to lean into corrective acts given our history of damage and destruction. Night Terrors in America by C.J. Evans. If I were to try, I begin with awe, with iron core, mantle, the oceans full of secretive things. Land, just a glimpse of skin, deliciously unblemished. Then closer, ferns and fjords and sliding glaciers. But I'd end up leaning in to trace walls, borders, touch a finger to the men practicing their sicknesses and landmines, scratching topsoil to lever out the hydrogen bombs and gas chambers they'd have history's dirty mirror forget. I still don't want to leave my want for this place behind. If I were to try again, whales, white spiders in caves, and all those simple stones that carry no trace of us. The Slowdown is a production of American Public Media in partnership with the Poetry Foundation. This project is also supported in part by the National Endowment for the Arts on the web at arts.gov. To get a poem delivered to you daily, go to slowdownshow.org and sign up for our newsletter. And find us on Instagram and Twitter at Slowdown Show. The Slowdown is written by me, Major Jackson. It is produced by Myka Kielbon. Our music is composed by Alexis Cuadrado. Engineering by Alex Simpson and Josh Savageau. That's my jam right there. High five. Wonderful team. It's really wonderful.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Oh my gosh, I'm glad that we got to listen to it together.
Yeah. Yeah, the elements all came together.
I think so too.
Yeah. I'd be super curious to hear the first theme with the stripped down version, because we were talking at the beginning. You mentioned we don't want too many layers because too many layers may become distracting. I'd like to A/B it and then just see.
Too many layers can have a thickness that prevents the listener to get into the words. I think it kind of can eclipse it.
Yes, it's almost like it's fighting against each other because there's so many little elements that you want to get attention to, and I think that's also like the way that I conceive these pieces is very modular and dynamic in the sense that you have a theme, but the theme doesn't have to have all the layers.
Right.
You can take them, you can peel them or put them back together. It's like, because it's functional music. It's like the music is dressing you. It's not trying to, it's people have to pay attention to you, not the dress.
We just recorded a poem today that is the same concept but language. Or is talking about language as a dressing for the self.
Right.
Which is, also kind of what we're doing with the show in a way.
Right. Totally.
Okay, I have the initial demo.
Yeah, I like the last one much better because...
This, the one that we ended up with feels so much more contemporary. I feel like that's the biggest thing for me, is that it feels very, very current.
Right.
And that it has this collage aspect in the final. That that's what I really love about it so much, is that it's this thing that feels, it's that experience where everything is familiar, but it feels so new, and it's almost kind of where did this come from?
It came from your playlist, and seriously, and it came from it's the menu.
was it too diverse? Is that
no?
Yeah.
I think. I mean, and of course, I mean, your input was so valuable in the sense that Myka, you I mean, like I rarely get the first email saying we don't want saxophone, we don't want upright bass, we want this, we want that, you know, and it's like, oh, cool, can do, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a question on that: do you feel like the DNA of what you just composed, that a keen listener would be able to figure out those threads, those strands, those maybe even periods?
Yes, for sure. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I also have a bit of a community of producer friends, and you know, we send stuff to each other to listen. One of them is a drummer, and he said, "Oh, dude, I love this Jay Dilla meets Philip Glass thing, you know, that you got going. It's like, it's kind of bizarre." And he said, it's like, and generally you don't hear that kind of like more R&B-ish oriented thing with acoustic instruments.
Oh, fascinating.
And like, it's much
sense.
less with the nylon guitar. But I think for the intro, it'll be interesting for you guys to experiment more with what the fader of layers feels right.
I would even
for
like,
you know,
as much as my superiors would let me, love to like you do that layering like over the course of the show and like let it be organic. Like the show has the same basic structure, but to say like people hear this music every single day, and it's like it feels different to you every day because like you feel differently when you hear the same song in a new day. It feels slightly different, but it's like, what if the song is a little different too?
I think that what I want is to empower you guys to the music is yours. It's not mine anymore. It's like I've just given it to you. Be playful with it. I mean, it's a living organism. It's not a dead thing that it's like set in stone, you know. It's not a record. It's like you can...
Or even to take like the clothes metaphor, like it's a wardrobe.
Yeah.
Like you have sewn a wardrobe and it's like, how do we want to style outfits?
Yeah, totally.
One of the... just thinking about the list and the requests and the email, we use the word soulful, I think, or at least I asked Myka to, and I strongly feel that. The other hurdle was creating something that could accommodate the range of topics and subject matter and maybe even emotions that each poem embodies. And I know that that's probably part of the forte of your compositional process, is having music that's malleable.
I feel like I had a lot of freedom on the one hand because it's like, you know, I can do whatever I want as long as I check these boxes, and that's like, and I also want it has to feel right to me as a listener, and I think to me that's the most important part. Like sometimes I've done themes in like a day. And it's done, and I just like go and jam for a little bit. It's like, oh, this is a good chunk. And I had that little thing, and it's interesting. I posted it on Instagram. It's like, grab a guitar, play something, and see what happens, you know? But it's like then how you organize it in a way that feeling is not lost, but then it starts to check all the boxes at the same time. I want to listen to it as a listener and forget that I detach from it, from the maker side.
There's something with it where, like, I feel, especially with this theme, there's, like, a couple moments that, like, have to kind of, like, physically address you, like, because you get lost in the show itself. And it's funny with the outro, I had it in my head since we first started these conversations that you want it to come in as just, like, one instrument comes in at the end, and then they start to layer. And I knew for Major I wanted it to be drums.
Right.
And I never actually said that to you, I don't think.
Wow. That's interesting.
And it ended up working really well. And I remember when you first were putting in that, like, it was like that kick snare. Yeah. And I was like, when you first put it in, and I was like, I don't really feel this. It was like not really working for me. It was feeling too hard. And then it was like, but where to put it? And then once you put it right there, it almost comes in like as a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And it's that moment where it's like you are lost in the poem, and then the music is like coming back to like take you out of your mind and back into your body or something, and say like, here we are. And the drums work so well, I think, with Major's voice to do that. Like it's that, you know, and then that reverberation of the drum, and it like sounds so right with this theme.
You know what's amazing though? I remember that we had a Zoom session Myka, in which we spent maybe 10 or 15 minutes like fine tuning the kick drum, the two of us. To get,
really?
Yeah.
Because prom band bass drum.
Because I mean, and I'm just gonna go into the nitty gritty because the way that I build these sounds are like sometimes different layers of different kick drums, and there's this thing called the attack, which is like the actual moment in which the sound is hit, you know, and you can sort of like sand back and forth how much of that because there's the pop, and then there's the you know, and how do you mix those two things? And it has to be addressed by feeling. You know, the little knobs don't really matter. And I don't think I've ever like played with the attack of a kick drum with a podcast producer before, or a producer of any kind for that matter. But it what I really appreciated is like, you knew it's too hard, but you still needed to feel like a push. You know what I mean? And it still, in a way, it needs to move the air literally, because that's what the kick drum is going to do. But it's, you know, it's going to give you that you're alive again.
Yeah, exactly.
Moment,
like it's that,
you know. So,
resurrection moment.
And that I appreciated that attention to fractal details. That's just like to go from the micro to the macro. And like the macro is like, it needs to have this feeling. And the micro is like, we can get this feeling if we mess with the attack of this kick drum.
Was that also the approach to, I want to say that initially I wasn't sure about the acoustic guitar, but I'm so happy that it's there for many different reasons. Maybe something that Myka said quite profoundly about how physiologically you can feel some of the parts of the music. The acoustic guitar also feels like it was sanded back just a little bit in the final.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of I would say sound curation that goes into post. Like when you hear that first demo, everything is bah on your face, kind of, you know, and then it's like the spices, it's the mixing part. And we have a lot of tools these days to do that kind of stuff. Like there's this compartmentalizing of all these processes. Like first it's like the composition and the orchestration. So how are these all going to interplay together? And then second, once it's settled, how are they actually going to sound together? How are they going to play? It makes a big difference if something is on the left or the right, or how much delay it has, or how much this or that it has, and it's all in service of the feeling, and that's what matters to me the most, at least. You know?
Here's a question for you: the moment of composition, I would think logically, is the moment where you're most improvising, but are you equally improvising when you are finalizing the piece?
To me, at this point, it's all by ear.
Yeah.
It's all by feel, and it's like this back and forth process between the right brain and the left brain. Like the right brain knowing what the appropriate tool is, like the art and the craft. I know in order to get this feeling, I could try this tool and see what happens. It's like having all the knives to cut the wood there, and which one are you going to choose, you know? And of this kind of knife, I have 6. Which one, you know, is the most appropriate? So I try to like not overthink too much, and just like do the minimum so that it all works. The acoustic guitar on the intro theme was very, very hard to mix, actually.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah, very much.
I think also because it's like it sounds so natural, and then you're putting it in with a lot of like other pre-recorded things as well.
Yeah.
I'm really struck by, when you listen to the first demo, how the string bridge stands out so much, and then in the final version, like it is actually so like naturally integrated into. Right. And I feel like that comes from, I kept, you know, wanting like weird sounds, you know, wanting the sparkles. We've talked a lot about that, where I'm like, I want sparkles. Like I want something that's like, and you're using like the EBow, and I really like the way like that kind of brings it into the same like sonic universe.
Yeah.
Where it's like, we're in this kind of like, and it's doing that like slowing down process. Like the show is like okay, everybody, like 5 minutes, we're here. And it's when you have these kind of like atmospheric sounds like sweeping in and out. And it's also something that's like, you're not hearing that in a lot of like Philip Glass or in a lot of Jay Dilla. And so it's like a really left field way to marry kind of different things.
The Ebo thing was like, I heard it and it's like, I need to do this and get it. And I've never used one. And just like, I watched a YouTube video how to use the Ebo. It's like, okay, let's go, let's do it. And I did a couple of takes and mess ups and then cut it together, and it totally works.
Not to just draw another poetry metaphor, but that was like recently I was working on something and then I was like, this is like a Petrarchan sonnet. And I'm like, I've never written a Petrarchan sonnet. I had no, like, and I was, this is a poem that I had written like 6 years ago, and I had this draft sitting there for so long, and then I was like, oh, like, the Volta happens this many lines in, so it couldn't be, like, I didn't even realize, A, I didn't realize I had written a sonnet, and then B, I had written a Petrarchan sonnet, not a, like, Shakespearean sonnet, and then I was like, how to write a Petrarchan sonnet? Because I looked at this thing, and I was like, this requires something else.
Right.
And then I was like, oh, this is the thing it requires. And it just,
Right.
like, presented itself to me
Yeah.
6 years later.
It's the tool question.
Yeah.
Yeah. it's
I
like-
mean, but it's the eternal, and Major, I think this is a good topic for you to enlighten us with, which is like, where does the craft and the art begin? You know what I mean? It's like the eternal question about that, and I don't know anymore.
Yeah.
But I do know the craft is really important to forget about it almost at some point.
When you ask that question, what comes to mind is William Carlos Williams, how can you tell the dancer from the dance? And which is to say that the art and craft eventually becomes a lived thing inside of you. And that's why I'm curious about improvisation, because we have the tools, but there's something else within that helps animate that moment. You know, they're kind of interdependent.
Right. And it's interesting because I think that the most programmed part of these pieces is the beats, right? The drums. I use programming, but I try to make the programming as human as I can.
Yeah,
You know, it's
yeah.
like, but it's also like, it's clear that it's programming. And I think that's what Jay Dilla did. Like, he just
Right.
cut things and made them sound human, which is very odd, you know?
Well,
So,
samples, all of
Yeah.
it, you know,
Yeah.
it becomes, it filters through him
yeah.
itself, you know,
Yeah.
that's the,
He was the vehicle.
yeah.
Which is amazing. But yeah, I mean, and on we went talking about everything and nothing, fixing the world one sonnet at a time, and discussing music, life, arts, how do we do things, and our process. And for us, I think our process was as important and as interesting as the result. If there's one takeaway that I get from the series, is that one idea can take you a long way. Just worth it to pursue one idea all to the very end and see what happens. And then when you're done, try another one and just keep going. So I want to finish playing the first idea of the music for the Slowdown that I played in this room, in my studio, and with this guitar. And it's a nice musical way to say, see you soon. Take care.